Okay, thank you for coming. I'm Hank Giffen. I'm the East Coast Vice President, one of the two, for the Surface Navy Association. And I'd like to first introduce Admiral Moore, and then we're going to do a award, one of the Surface Navy Association's really, really difficult award to win, and I'll go into that in a second. And then we'll kick off the panel. So first of all, Vice Admiral Thomas Moore, whose dad was my Desron commander, and he was a fantastic leader, and he ranked me very highly, so that's why I made flag. So, and I didn't kiss his ass either. He wouldn't let me. No. So anyway, Admiral Moore is a second-generation naval officer, obviously. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1981. He served on 4 ships in 13 years as a surface nuclear trained officer. In 1994, he went to a lateral transfer to the Engineering Duty Officer Corps. He served in soup ships, op-nav, major program manager for in-service aircraft carriers, and PEO aircraft carriers for 5 years. Wow. Thank goodness guys like you will do that work, because that's tough. And then in June 2016, he became the NAVSEA commander, and he's done a fantastic job. Very, very, just the kind of leader that we've needed in NAVSEA, and we're all very proud of that. So with that, I will kick off the award, and we're supposed to have Mr. Captain Schenk here as well from Adobe. Okay, we'll go without him. All right. So this is the Captain Raymond Koromoski Photo Award, and do you have that in the back to put up? It's the one of the Coast Guard cutter going through the Panama Canal. It looks like a painting. It doesn't look like a photo. It's just amazing. But it's the first place ship and grand prize winner is Captain Mark Gordon from the Coast Guard. It depicts the Coast Guard cutter Hamilton, WMSL 753, northward bound in the Panama Canal, crossing under the Centennial Bridge. So here's the beautiful plaque. And it just basically reads, the purpose of this award is to recognize pictorial representation of the professional activities and life of the diverse elements of the surface warfare community and their contribution to naval warfare, to educate the citizens of the United States as to the purpose of surface warfare and its achievements, to provide archival material, and to reinforce interest in surface warfare professionalism. It's signed by Vice Admiral Rich Hunt, who is the president of SNA. So congratulations, Cap.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Well done. Here you go.
Get the photo. Good. And he gets a check.
All right, even better. What's my share of that?
Yeah, we all get 10% of that check.
Thank you. Okay.
Very good. Okay, and Admiral Moore will bring his panel on and do the introductions. I think they're all mic'd up, I hope.
Congrats. Congrats.
You can sit anywhere you want.
I can just grab a chair.
This is a little bit different format than the other 3 or 4 years where we sit behind a table. I kind of feel like Oprah Winfrey sitting up here. The other thing, I mean, these are probably the most comfortable chairs I've ever sat in, and you know, I'm going to be flying to San Diego when I finish this afternoon, and the seat that I'm actually sitting in will actually have someone next to me, and so I'm going to get used to the room here. We are great to be here. This is a panel discussion on building the future fleet. Which is appropriate. We take a look at what the CNO's Frago is, and one of his 3 lines of efforts obviously talks about building the future fleet. So I think we're going to have a nice, robust discussion here. I'm going to let the panelists talk for about 5 to 7 minutes max, and then I'm going to give them the hook, because the idea is to allow an interchange. They're going to talk about what's on their plate, big picture things. We'll open up the floor to questions, and absent questions, I have several questions that I've already written down that I think will engender a robust discussion. We have the usual suspects from NAVSEA, Bill Galinis, who's PEO Ships, Casey Moton, who's PO USC, Doug Small, who's at PO IWS, and privileged again to have the Coast Guard. You will notice down in the end that we've got somebody out of uniform here. One of the things that I thought for this year that make this a little bit different and interesting was, and to recognize the importance of the partnership that we have with industry, is that we would have industry sit on the panel with us. And you'll see in the afternoon panel as well. Last year, the maintenance panel, we were able to get the Type Commander. We're going to be privileged to have Admiral Kitchener sit again, but we'll have an industry rep here too. So just to give you a different perspective on what industry's seeing on the challenges, and I think that will be interesting discussion for all of us. So Matt Paxton, we're certainly grateful to have each of you here. So to panels, we're just going to go move left to right. But I won't introduce you, just introduce yourself. You get about 5 to 7 minutes. I'll be timing, a little clock down there. Key is to talk about what's on your plate, big picture issues, and then when we finish, again, we'll open up the floor to questions, and I've got some other things as the moderator going forward. So, over to you, Doug.
All right, good morning. Good morning. I think I'll stand. So, thanks for being here, and I'm privileged to be here. I'm Rear Admiral Doug Scofield, and I'm the Coast Guard's Director of Acquisition Programs and Program Executive Officer. So I'm going to highlight a little bit about my portfolio. I'm very excited to be here. As you've heard or know, I've got ships as old as 80 plus years old, Coast Guard Cutter Eagle, and operational cutters doing missions, straight missions, older than 70 years old. So I got a big job. I'm very privileged to work with industry and our operational partners because it's all about bringing capability to the field and then enhancing those capabilities that I have to keep running. So we should have a slide to show my portfolio, hopefully. But if we don't, if we can't get that up, I'll talk about some of my platforms. First, recently we awarded a contract to, in the upper left-hand corner, our 47 motor lifeboats. These are our big search and rescue platforms on our east coast and west coast of the U.S. We have a contract up to 107 boats to do a service life extension. Really, this is a repowering, some instructional enhancements, and electronic upgrades on these boats. Very critical to our nearshore operations. Very great asset. I'm excited to work that contract and get this capability back out to the field more reliable and be able to keep this going for many years to come. Upper right, cutter boats. We have both legacy cutter boats and our new acquisition cutter boats. We have long-range interceptors, over-the-horizon boats. These are boats that can go 150 miles plus, long-range communications, and do multi-missions off our main cutter fleet. Great interoperability, common communication suite, both DoD, Coast Guard, and DHS. So very important to us overall. We continue to recapitalize those. We're looking for our 5th generation over-the-horizon boat, 3rd generation long-range interceptor coming up soon. Middle left, national security cutter. We're under contract for 11 boats currently. We delivered our 8th this past year. Great capability out to the fleet. Been working very importantly. This is really a fully interoperable DoD platform. Been working a lot with the Navy, and that partnership's stronger than ever with that platform. Middle, looking shortly to work a waterways commerce cutter, our inland river and construction tenders near coast. I have 35 boats right now. Oldest built 1944. We've overhauled her too many times. We need to replace her. Cutter Smilax in North Carolina as part of those boats. But very important mission. A lot of folks don't realize how important that mission is for the inland rivers and coastal waterways, but very, very critical. Polish security cutter, next one to the right, have a contract up to 3 Polish security cutters. This is the real partnership with the Navy. I'm very proud. Mr. Matt Sermon's running around here. He and I together, we're brothers to deliver a great United States capability in the latest heavy icebreaker to the fleet. This is going to be a great platform, great mission set for us. Lower left-hand corner, our largest offshore cutter fleet in size, the Offshore Patrol Cutter. Got a contract. We're currently building the first hull right now. This is we're looking to build a fleet of 25 of these. This is 70% of our coverage offshore. Very important cutter class for us. Middle, Polar Star. We're doing the Polar Star, built in the 70s. Our only operational heavy icebreaker currently. She's actually down breaking out ice at McMurdo Station as we speak. Great mission. Hard part for us is keeping her running. She goes out, does the mission in McMurdo, comes home, we take her out of the water and dock her. I need to do some upgrades, and so I'm working with our sustainment community in hand. I'm working on some electrical upgrades, some control system upgrades, and some major system upgrades for obsolescence and other reasons on her. And it's a multi-year contract. Very excited to get that contract out here in the near future. Last one is Fast Response Cutter, our patrol boats. Program a record of 58. Congress has also given us funding appropriations for 4 to continue our operations in Southwest Asia, working with Navy there and doing our normal law enforcement operations in the Persian Gulf. So great capability for us, really much more robust seakeeping and boat launch and recovery with over-horizon boats on those, and a great C5I suite. So I'm looking forward to questions today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I will say that I know Matt Sermon, and if you two are brothers, you're brothers from a different mother. So just want to make sure. Right. Sorry about that. Okay, Doug Small, over to you.
So first, I'd just like to continue with Admiral Moore's description of the talk show format, but he missed the opportunity, by the way, to say, and you get a ship, and you get a ship, and you get a ship. So.
And you get a radar, and you get a radar,
Yes.
and you get
Yes.
a radar.
So I'm Doug Small. I have the privilege with Ms. Jill Boward to lead the nation's Surface Combat Systems Acquisition, Engineering, and Technical Organization, PEO-IWS. Our primary focus, like any of us, is on developing that workforce to make sure that we are always, the finest combat systems organization in the world. For the purposes of this panel, beyond our current focus of obviously current fleet, ASABO 1.0, fight tonight, on-time delivery, never lose sight of that. We're constantly driving towards delivering lethality at a speed of relevance. Hopefully we'll talk about it, but the ships of today, our job is to make sure that the ships of today and tomorrow are much more capable by themselves and absolutely together than their quantities would indicate. That's how do you make the each ship that much more powerful in conjunction with every other one. So we have a dizzying array of projects from obviously the missiles that we're procuring. Just went to multi-year procurement on Standard Missile 6. So we're going to get those out there in amazing quantities. Electronic warfare systems that our goal is to, and we're about halfway there, basically detect anything that's emitted and then jam it with the goal of, basically what we want to make sure is that any would-be adversary sees what we want them to see, period. Laser systems are being installed. Lasers are here to stay. We're already making installations on some ships of a smaller, lower power system. We're certainly helping. ONR has been putting out some higher power lasers, and we are well on the path to integrating lasers as a warfighting capability on our ships. Sensors. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the SPY 6 and a lot of the other types of capabilities that are being delivered with Aegis Baseline 10. What an incredible capability that's going to be. And then really pushing hard on integrated fire control. The way you get to lethality at speed is let's use the stuff that we already have and make sure that we can use any sensor to deliver any effect at any range that we need to. And so we've been pushing really hard on that. And a lot of this stuff has been, we've talked a lot about combat systems virtualization and a lot of the tools that we're bringing that commercial industry does, like platform and infrastructure as a service, and the speed that that's going to unleash for us. Our push is toward what we call continuous delivery. We want to make sure that we have the systems in place so that it's not a technical challenge to be able to deliver whatever capability is that we need well before we need it. And then there's a whole host of other things that will help in shipbuilding and everything else when you don't have that sort of dedicated processing. So continuous delivery, continuous ATO, so we're not constantly doing RMF paperwork for Admiral Moore, taking up all of his time. and just really a push towards speed. This is all just taking on what's in commercial industry. So with that, I look forward to your questions, and hope we'll get into some of the other stuff, and we'll talk about ships too, I think. That's it for me.
Admiral Moton, over to you.
All right. Good morning. Admiral Casey Moton, PEO Unmanned and Small Combatants. Very happy to be here as well to talk about our portfolio. I'm just glad it's Oprah Winfrey and not Jerry Springer. Otherwise, little PEO smackdown up here, Admiral Small, right? But you know, I'm glad for that format. So PEO USC, I have 7 program officers that work for me, but I really think of it in terms of 4 lines of effort. So, and I'll talk about these. So LCS, all things LCS, kind of the first line of effort. Frigate, the new frigate, unmanned as well, we'll talk about that. And of course, the 4th line of effort is mine warfare, both mine countermeasures and offensive mining as well. So that's what we do in PEO USC. I think I'll hit the first 3 mostly today, although if there's questions, I can certainly touch on a little bit more on mine warfare. So, you know, in terms of those, you know, the importance of what USC is developing to the fleet, if you think about distributed maritime operations, if you think about the future service combatant force, right, PEO USC is producing, there's 5 legs, right, Flight 3 and then LSC for large combatants, small combatants, medium unmanned, large unmanned, and integrated combat system. So PEO USC, we're producing 3 of those legs. So a critical part of the game of bringing the capability to the Navy. The first line of effort for LCS, a key part of that. All, you know, the status there, it's really actually an exciting time. I came into the PO in an exciting time. From terms of production, all 35 ships, all 35 LCSs that we're going to build are under contract. 19 of those are delivered. We're at a pretty blistering pace. 5 ships are going to deliver in FY20. And our LCS shipbuilding program office, as far as I can tell, is pretty much just sea trial to sea trial to sea trial to sea trial. I mean, they are really in that production mode. You know, ships are doing well. Trial scores are coming in well. The production hours for the ships we're building now are 30% down from where we were at the start of the block buy. And the schedules have really stabilized and predictable. So just a lot of great work. You know, the other thing about LCS, of course, this is the building the panel, so I'm focusing on the production, but you know, if you walk the waterfront, either in Mayport or San Diego, there's a lot of LCSs at the pier, right? And so a lot of what Admiral Brown has talked this week about mainstreaming LCS, you know, we're a key player in that, and are really excited to see those ships being used and to you know, flesh out issues, and 3 ships deployed right now. The opportunity to support those ships, but also the opportunity to roll lessons learned back into the program has been pretty exciting for us. LCS mission modules, a lot of success there. So surface, we were basically done. The Hellfire is deployed on LCS 7, the Detroit, right now, down at 4 Fleet, tested off of LCS 6 on the Independence variant earlier this year. ASW, we have the packages installed on the USS Fort Worth right now. We'll go to IOT&E this year. Testing has already started. We actually have deployed the VDS off of the Fort Worth. And then MCM, the aviation systems are certified, have been tested on both variants, and we're moving rapidly towards the IOT&E. All of the systems right now are in test, right? So Knifefish went to OA and Milestone C, and US and the USV, all the systems are in test. That's LCS. Next, FFGX. So solid path for this multi-mission frigate, or as I like to call it, we don't call it that enough, it is an Aegis frigate. And we are part of that Aegis weapon system. We have bids in hand on frigate, headed towards Milestone B, and we're on path for contract award this year. So a lot of great things happening in frigate. Unmanned, a lot of discussion here, but you know, unmanned, very early stages. We are doing a lot of things here, foundational efforts, right? So beyond just the craft, the enabling technology that we're doing, the unmanned maritime architecture, just really key to our unmanned efforts. Prototypes The efforts we've done with the 2 overlord vessels that we have under the OSD SCO program have really paid a lot of dividends. Sea Hunter, really successful and has now transitioned actually to POUSC. MUSV, which is going to be our distributed sensing platform. We have bids in hand for the FY19 vessel, are in source selection there. LUSV, this is one that there's obviously been a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth with the Congress, which I think is pretty healthy. I read some history of naval aviation, and it may not surprise you to know that when we first started with naval aviation, it wasn't like, okay, we're just going to start a production line and immediately start building. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of testing, a lot of prototypes. So, we have a lot of discussion going on there, but the key pieces are prototypes. We received funds for 2 more prototypes, which is key to us testing reliability and autonomy. We're going to start our conceptual design, and we know we're having a robust discussion with the Congress and others about the weapons capacity for LUSV, and I think that that's healthy, and that's going to continue, and I'm confident we're going to move forward with a good plan. And then just the last thing, organizationally, the Surf Devron has stood up, has already done great things, has now taken custody of Sea Hunter out there. So, very early in the stages of unmanned, but I think we're doing all the right things, right, in terms of prototyping, getting us set up organizationally, just really healthy, and I think we're still on a good track. So I'm proud to be at POUSC. We're doing great things. I'm proud to be part of this team that's building this great Navy of ours. Thank you.
Okay, Admiral Galinis.
Sir, thank you. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's a real privilege to be here. I'm Bill Galinis, and along with Matt Sermon and Lisa Radoka, have the privilege of leading PEO ships and working with our industry counterparts. This time last year, I think Matt and Lisa were just coming into their positions as our executive directors, and so they've just finished their first year, and again, very grateful to have them on board. Just real quickly, kind of around the portfolio, let me start with the DDG 51 class, which again continues to make great strides. The ship is in stable production. We're building Flight 2A ships right now in both shipyards. We're going to deliver 119 here early next year, and then 118 up at Bath, probably a little bit later in the year. So again, both yards, stable production on the Flight 2A. The Flight 3 program, 20 is a big year for the Flight 3 program. Okay, we're really heavily into the integration efforts, the land-based integration efforts at Philadelphia, where we're delivering a lot of the power components. That's everything from generators to switch gears and switchboards, and then at the Combat Systems Engineering Development Center in Morristown, a lot of the radar and a lot of the combat system components are coming together. So a big year from that perspective. We laid the keel for the first Flight 3 ship on the Gulf Coast at Ingalls last November. That ship is now about 30% complete, and the production work is going very well down there on the first Flight 3 on the Gulf Coast, and we'll lay the keel for the second Flight 3 up in Bath later this year. So again, the DDG 51 program continues to make good progress. DDG 1000, again, 3-ship program, as I mentioned. I don't think it's any secret. The combat system activation availability for DDG 1000 was hard, and to the credit of BAE and the Navy Waterfront team in San Diego, we got through that early last year, and the ship is now well into the combat system test effort, well over 60% of that. But again, working through a first-time integration of a complex combat system, the hardware and the software on the ship, really for the first time, really kind of gives you some insight to the dividends of doing a lot of the land-based integration work that we're doing on the 51, and that quite frankly is envisioned for the large surface combatant when we get to that piece. That being said, the team continues to make good progress. The ship was underway quite a bit last year in 2019. If you heard Captain Smith talk yesterday, along with the CEO from 1000, they talked a lot about what the ship did. We're on track to deliver 1000 this spring. The challenges continue to be with the combat system test effort and getting through that integration piece, but the team continues to make good progress there. 1001 going through her combat system activation avail in San Diego, and again, night and day from 1000 to 1001, and the team has done an absolutely tremendous job of rolling a lot of lessons learned in, and we're on track to complete that avail again early this spring. We'll get her back to sea and start lighting off and testing her combat system as well. And then 1002 is kind of in the final stages of construction. We expect to take her to trials here later this year with the delivery, most likely probably in early calendar year 2021. So again, that's a platform that continues to make good progress, brings a lot of capability to the Navy. It's providing Navy leadership, I'll say, with a lot of options in terms of potential future capability and mission sets. I think everybody knows, a few years ago we changed the mission set for that platform from a land attack destroyer to a surface strike mission, and we're incorporating that capability on that platform as we go forward. On the amphibious ship side, the LPD-17 class, we've completely transitioned now to the Flight 2. So LPD 28 and 29 in construction on the Gulf Coast. 30 is on contract and getting ready to start construction. That LPD 30 is the first absolutely true Flight 2 baseline ship. 28 and 29, we kind of refer to those ships as transition ships as we were making that transition from the Flight 1s to the Flight 2s. And we're getting ready right now we're in the contracting phase for LPD 31 with Ingalls at this point, and so we're working through that. On the large deck amphib side, LHA-7 Tripoli completed a very successful acceptance trial late last fall in the October timeframe. The ship performed very well, and we're on track to deliver that ship here early this year. So, and the big game changer for that, what that ship really brings to the fleet, that will be the first amphib designed and built with the Joint Strike Fighter capability included, and that really is a game changer. America LHA-6 arrived in Japan late last year. She was backfitted with the Joint Strike Fighter after ship delivery. So 7's the first one that will be delivered with that full capability. So, and we'll see that now in the follow-on ships. LHA-8 is in construction and doing very well. And we expect this year we'll start the contracting approach or the contracting process rather for LHA-9. So we're moving forward on that. On the expeditionary and the sea lift side of the portfolio, again, a lot of tremendous progress. I think when we were here last year, we were talking about ESP-5 and some of the challenges with that coming out of the graving dock casualty in San Diego. I will tell you, NASSCO and the Navy waterfront team, just an absolute phenomenal job recovering from that. And we took the ship on trials last year and performed superbly, just absolutely superb performance. And we delivered the ship in November, and she's going through her post-delivery efforts now. On her sister ship, ESP-4, the Woody Williams, she is finishing up her post-shakedown availability in Norfolk right now. And again, a lot of great capability. She will deploy later this year to the 6th Fleet AOR, working with the Military Sea Lift Command and Surfland on that effort. A lot of good work going on there. One of the things that we're able to do this year on that platform, on the Woody Williams, working with Admiral Moton and his team, was demonstrate a mine warfare capability of integrating the Littoral Combat Ship Mine Warfare Package onto Woody Williams and demonstrate a mission set, which was a very successful demonstration. So, as we get these ships into the fleet, and the Polar, the USS Polar is in the 5th Fleet right now, and just doing tremendous things. We're on a path to commission these ships. They were initially envisioned to be USNS ships. We're getting ready to commission. We've already commissioned Polar. We're going to commission the Woody Williams, here in another couple of weeks or so, and then 5 will be commissioned. Miguel Keith will be commissioned, at some point in the near future. The expeditionary fast transport ships, we're making a shift on this. So we've talked previously about a high-speed medical transport capability to those platforms. So we've delivered 12 of these ships. 13's in construction right now. We're going to contract for a engineering change proposal on 14, EPF 14, which is under contract with also right now to bring in this medical transport capability to that platform. So when they build that, we'll incorporate that in with the build sequence. And then as we contract for EPF 15 this year, that will have that medical transport capability as part of the base contract. So again, they continue to make good progress there. The Sealift program, 19 was I'll call it a little bit of a transition year for us. As we kind of reevaluated requirements and the cost of the ships, the initial cost estimates were coming in higher. We kind of working with, we've got 4 shipyards right now under contract doing studies and really kind of starting with almost like a baseline. Think of a vehicle transport ship, a commercial car carrying transport ship, and then building up from that baseline set of requirements to incorporate some of the unique requirements that we need for the Navy and the DoD mission. So think of things like, how do we handle ammunition, some of the heavier cargo that we carry, like tanks and things like that, and what that brings to that ship. So, and we met with all 4 teams just before last December, just before the end of the year. They're really making good progress there, and so so that program continues to go forward. We're also working with N97 on what the the recapitalization of the submarine tenders look like as well. So a lot of good work going on there. In our auxiliary and special mission purpose ships, we continue to recapitalize the TAO class. The first 2 ships are under construction right now at NASCO, making good progress, and they'll continue. We're still a little ways away before taking those to trial. And then we've got a number of different auxiliary platforms that we're working with the OPNAV team on. A new TAGOS design. We've got some industry studies planned to start this year. Another TAG ship, an oceanographic ship for the Navy, kind of a follow-on design from TAG. This is TAG 67, so a follow-on from TAG 66. And then we're also recapitalizing our cable laying and cable repair ships. So those programs are also, in addition to that, just a lot of foreign military sales work going on across the enterprise. The last platform I just want to touch on briefly, the large surface combatant. We had a very good meeting with Navy leadership again right before the Christmas holiday there. We're going to continue to refine the requirements on that. We've got some work to do to again bring the cost down. Looking at the capabilities that we want to bring into that. So think, bigger, longer range weapons, more computing power, more electrical power on that ship. So the team has really done a good job. Looking at what we're starting this year, we were funded to do some system integration work. So the Electric Ships Program Office within PEO Ships, working with CO5, we're putting together. We've got a pretty good plan on how we want to try to really start recapitalizing a little bit some of the test elements that we have up in Philadelphia to establish an integrated propulsion plant, an electric propulsion plant test facility up there. So that work is going on. We'll see more progress on that as we get deeper into 2020. So we continue to work that program. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Okay. Sir. All right. Matt Paxton.
Well, Admiral, thank you so much.
Yep.
It's an honor for private industry to be part of this panel. As a lone civilian up here, I'm going to make my comments brief. I got 3 quick slides. I just want to give some brief background on the trade association I represent. I'm Matthew Paxton, President of the Shipbuilders Council of America. Next slide, please. So our membership consists of 40 shipyard companies that own and operate about 83 shipyard facilities across the United States. We have 105 supplier companies that represent the supply chain of the shipyard industry, and they're really, really integral to what our trade association does. In addition, we work very closely in strategic partnership with our ship repair associations. So we work with all the home ports on ship repair issues. In fact, we're meeting yesterday on maintenance and modernization issues for the Navy. So that's the makeup of the trade association. Next slide, please. I put this slide up here because a lot of my board of directors are in this room, and they're watching me. But no, I point my board of directors out because the diversity of which this board is, but also because they're active. You'll notice we have 3 supplier companies on our board, And that's the wisdom of our active board that said, listen, our supply chain is absolutely critical. We need their inputs at the highest level of the trade association. So we have 3 supplier companies that sit on our board. Next slide, please. So beyond Navy shipbuilding, which we care tremendously about and we're active in, obviously, we build and other shipyard programs, and our shipyards compete vigorously in these other government shipbuilding programs. Obviously, we build every class of Coast Guard vessel. We work on Army watercraft. We work on NOAA ships. But the one program we really want to see get kickstarted is the recapitalization of the training ships for our maritime academies. We heard Administrator Busby talk a little bit about this earlier today, but we really need to get onto the business of building the national security multi-mission vessel. It's a game changer in what we can do with our merchant mariners. So we really want to see that program go forward. And then lastly, I'd point out this. It's really, really critical. Our board fully supports the Jones Act. We need to have that commercial industrial base. If we don't have that to help support the supply chain, to help support what we're doing in our Navy shipyards, building our Coast Guard assets, almost every one of our shipyards that is building a Coast Guard asset cut their teeth on commercial work. So we really need to maintain that industrial base. So on behalf of private industry, I'm grateful to be here, Admiral, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Okay, so we're in the section where you can come up and ask questions, and while the first person's trying to get up to the mic, I'll get us started with a couple of questions. So thanks for those remarks, Matt. And I think we'll stay with one of the things you talked about there. You mentioned the supply industrial base, the second tier and third tier below the prime shipbuilders. I think that's a challenge for all of us. I think I'm going to throw this question out to everybody on the panel. But as we try and grow the size of the force to 355, we tend to focus a lot of our efforts on the tier 1 builders. But clearly, we've got some challenges on the supply base as well. So I'd like you to discuss some examples and recommendations on things that we should be achieving to ensure we've got a more robust supply chain supporting the shipbuilding going forward.
I'll start off, Admiral, if you don't mind. You know, we obviously care greatly about Navy shipbuilding. That's why we're here today. But if I was looking out there and telling you what I thought was concerning me, I would say it's large commercial vessel construction. And what if another shipyard were to go away? We need to have as much competition as we possibly can. So we need to see, as an industry, we're very proud of the fact that we built out the tanker fleet at the height of the oil boom. Immediately we had to pivot and start building tankers for that oil market, and we did it, and we built that market out successfully. Right now our shipyards are completing the build out of the ro-ros and container ships for the non-contiguous fleets. We heard Admiral Busby talk about this earlier. We have 99 ships, large ocean-going ships in the commercial fleet. It's really important that we maintain that commercial industrial base. If that were to go away, it becomes harder and harder to justify, hey, we got to build things here. So the one thing I would say to this panel, we do think recapitalization of the auxiliary fleet is critical. The Champ ship is not a $1.2 billion ship. It can be a much cost-effective ship if we have series production, if we get the requirements right, and we have a long horizon to build that ship out. I think the industrial base will step up, and there'll be some yards that might not be building Navy ships. It'll jump in and compete for that auxiliary recapitalization.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else on supply chain management? Yep.
Yeah, so I'll take. So one of the things we've done in PO ships is, you know, again, working with our shipyard, the major shipyards that we have contracts with, you know, looking into some of the major system components and equipment suppliers is where we have seen areas to potentially improve them, have been able to actually make some, I'll say, a limited amount of investment to improve throughput and the capacity, you know, for some of these suppliers. But I will tell you, what this effort is kind of, you know, demonstrated to us is we probably need to do, I'll say, a better job working with the shipyards. Okay, so the shipyards, you know, generally have the contracts in place with the supply chain. We generally work through the shipyards, but there's probably a little bit more that we can do, maybe in terms of strengthening the supply chain and really getting a better assessment of where, you know, some of our challenge areas are. The submarine community has done, I think, a pretty good job of this. You know, PEO subs started under, Mike Jabley and now Scott Papano and Dave Goggins have kind of taken that on. But they've done a really good job kind of looking across the submarine supply base. We're kind of leveraging that and working with Secretary Gertz and Dazzle Ships in particular to kind of expand that focus a little bit within PEO ships. So that's an effort that we kind of started a little bit in 2019, and we've got some more plans for that in 2020.
Okay, thanks.
So just briefly to add on that, so first of all, we're involved in that effort. So is with a couple of key shipbuilding programs. We're going to work closely, obviously, with PEO ships so that that's a holistic look, and have done that in the past. And part of the RDA efforts that Admiral Galinis mentioned as well. I mean, just for frigate, this was a pretty interesting discussion that we had as part of the authorization appropriations process this year, and the domestic sourcing provisions for frigate. I think we said all along that we were very supportive of the policy of moving to the more robust domestic base. We wanted to do it in such a way that we were able to keep frigate on track, so that it's, because of its importance, I think where we ended up was a pretty good way of doing that. As far as we do have a set limit, with the 11th frigate, but we have a requirement to look at accelerating, which we take very seriously. So I think frigate was in a good place, but it's we've got more work to do there that we signed up. I mean, I guess the last thing I'll say is the conversations with the shipbuilders, for sure. But with, obviously not on contractual matters, but talking to the suppliers has been really helpful to me, individual companies. I had a pretty robust discussion a month or so ago with the American Shipbuilding Suppliers Association, which was really interesting. I got a lot of great feedback from them, and I think they heard my perspective. So, just having that conversation, I think, is a key piece as well.
Okay. Let me, I think the first person that was brave enough to stand up is over here behind the podium. So, sir, over to you.
All right, I'll just use my slow voice.
It's on now.
Good, now I'm yelling in it. So Tom Weatherall, General Dynamics NASSCO. This is for Matt. Last year in the 30-year shipbuilding plan, in the auxiliary section, Navy indicated that their reason for delaying the start of the Sealift program beyond the congressionally mandated date was the result of, quote, the struggling commercial shipbuilding industry, unquote. And I wonder if you might give us your perspective on that and tell us specifically how the SCA reacted to it.
Well, thank you, Tom. First of all, we know there's healthy competition for every SEN dollar, and we are grateful for the last several years of robust funding that's gone into the SEN account. We find it discouraging that the auxiliary ships are always 1 year outside the fit-up. We would like to see us get onto the business of doing that. I understand how difficult it is with scarce dollars and some of the assets that we have to recapitalize. I would say private industry is proud of what we do across the waterfront. I think NASSCO is a great example of the hustle that can go on sometimes, where you're out there hustling for commercial work and you win a month without Navy work, and you're able to bridge that gap with commercial work. So I think that's kind of the message that we want to bring from the private sector, is that we benchmark ourselves against international standards. We're not sitting here idly by saying, hey, we're going to get a contract and make good. We're trying to improve. We're the country that built the first LNG-powered container ship. That happened here because of our innovation. So I think we do have struggles across the waterfront in some of the industrial base aspects. There are pinch points, but I do think we are doing everything we can under the auspices of the Jones Act, under the auspices of the government shipbuilding programs that we compete vigorously for. We gave up the cost differential subsidy in the 1980s and ceded a lot of territory to the international market. Asian shipyards did not own 90% of the market share in the 1980s. They do now. And so we, as a fundamental matter, have to look at, do we want to make shipbuilding and our ship industrial base a national prerogative, a national priority? I think we do when it comes to Navy shipbuilding. I think we do when it comes to Coast Guard shipbuilding. I think we need to make that a larger statement when we go out to the commercial side of things.
Thanks, Pat. Mark.
Good morning, Admiral. This is somewhat tangentially tied into the industrial base. But one of the ways historically to broaden that industrial base, as well as to build partnership and alliances, is to have robust foreign military sales programs. Admiral Moton, I know you've got the multi-mission surface combatant program now with our Saudi partners. If I could just ask, kind of in a line, Admiral Small, Admiral Moton, Admiral Galinis, what of your emerging programs in each of your PEOs do you see as having the best potential for foreign military sales partnership programs in FMS cases? And in the case of Admiral Moton, with the multi-mission surface combatant, do you see additional potential partner nations signing up for that?
Okay, can I go first?
I mean, we take our, international deepening those partnerships very, very seriously. And our view is we want to be able, when our navies work together, we don't want them to be interoperable. We want them to be integrated. And so we take the approach of, basically everything that we're working on, we want to be able to share with our partners. And that's, so certainly Standard Missile has a long history of there's a lot of international interest in that. The next variants of Standard Missile, same thing, we're working on that. Aegis, we have Aegis fleets around the world. Those are navies that operate seamlessly together, and so the more that we can continue to do that, so Aegis is one that we're constantly working. It's really about everything. Electronic warfare. I mean, we work together with many nations, and it's not just FMS. There's plenty of DCS. We have a lot of cooperative development activities at the highest levels of technologies across the certainly with Five Eyes and the rest of our friends and allies around the world. So we have a very healthy FMS and cooperative portfolio.
Okay. Yeah. So first, your first question, right? As you mentioned, Mark, we have 4 multi-mission surface combatants under contract right now for the Saudi Arabian Navy, under contract with Lockheed Martin, Infantry Marinette Marine as their builder. We've cut steel. We're into production and definitized that contract back December. So that's going well. You asked me directly about the potential for additional there. I mean, from additional countries. We've had some interest from a couple other countries that have asked for some input. I don't think, frankly, any of those requests are at the stage yet where I'm ready to name names, so I won't do that. But we have had some additional interest, right, that we're looking at. As far as future capability, there's a pretty broad frigate market out there, right? I mean, we'll see what happens. Our focus in POUSC on frigate right now is, the conceptual design is done, so we are focused on being ready to start that detailed design with Milestone B and with that source selection. So, but certainly in the future, there's probably likely to be some discussions there, and our ability to have sort of set up an ability to do that kind of FMS work, I think, is an advantage. The last piece I wanted to mention was unmanned, right? So there is a lot of interest on unmanned, both on the USV side and the UUV side, from multiple countries. We work very closely with our close allies there. We are working on, the broader Navy is working on the policy document that's going to govern release of things unmanned. That's something that's in progress right now. So we're getting set up for that. We also are doing a lot of cooperative research and development. We were one of the lead participants in NATO ran an unmanned exercise this year, a few months ago in Portugal that was really effective, multiple unmanned vessels from different countries integrated. So I think there definitely is future in unmanned, all the way from, probably more likely on the smaller craft, but a broad interest based on the questions that we're getting. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I'll start with some of the work that we do in our foreign military sales organization already with the Navy International Program Office, right, with NIPO. So we do a lot of work, principally in this kind of, obviously the smaller boats, so these are patrol boat size. But we'll get the requirements from foreign countries, and we'll contract directly with shipyards here in the United States. Again, probably more on the smaller size, the patrol boat size. You know, I would say occasionally we'll get questions on some of our larger platforms, but I can't say there's been any consistent or persistent interest in platforms like an LPD or you know, some of the larger ships that we're building. You know, the other area potentially, some of the commercial-based auxiliary, you know, sea lift ships, maybe again, you know, so we've had, again, a couple of inquiries. We're still obviously very, very early in the sea lift recapitalization effort, but you know, depending on how that shakes out, there might be some interest there. But you know, our principal interface with other countries and everything is really through our foreign military sales organization on the patrol boat size boats that we build for them.
Thank you. John Harper with National Defense Magazine. Admiral Galinis, you mentioned the DDG 1000. Can you flesh out or provide more details about some of the changes that are being made to accommodate that surface strike mission? And just from a production perspective, if Navy leadership and Congress decided to buy more than 3 DDG 1000s, would that be feasible from a sort of an industrial base or program perspective?
Yeah. So let me, I'll start with the last part of your question first, which is, you know, follow on DDG 1000. I would tell you right now there's no plan to extend the class beyond the 3 ships that we've either delivered or have in construction right now. And then, you know, in terms of the strike piece, you know, we're looking at some new weapon systems. Okay, you know, SM6, advanced versions of Tomahawk, some mission planning capability to improve mission planning capability on the ship. Those are the principal areas that get us to that strike, you know, that strike variant, if you will, or that new mission set. Okay. The other thing that I would add, again, you know, just the size of the ship. You know, we've done a lot of testing on the hull form. There were some early concerns about, you know, how the ship would handle in heavy weather. I would tell you we're more than halfway through that testing, and that's going very well. So, you know, that platform, the size of the platform, the electric plant that it has, it does provide a lot of options, I think, for Navy leadership as we kind of think our way through that a little bit more.
And what are your plans for integrating directed energy? Discuss that.
I probably couldn't touch on that too much. I mean, there's we're really still, again, it gets back to some of the options that the ship design, the power architecture provide. You know, it's possible we could put something on there, but I'm not. I don't want to talk about that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to operate this panel under the premise of make news but not new news here today. So as much as possible, I learned that lesson from Sean Stackley a couple years ago. Doug, yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the surface strike thing. So our ability to deliver that type of capability to Zumwalt is really part of the larger strategy the Navy has of making our missile systems more offensive, right? And so the fact that we have an offensive strike capability in missiles that fit within the inherently modular launchers on Zumwalt allows us to bring that capability. So it's not a huge stretch, I guess, is the point. So it's really about, you know, as these ships get operated more and more, and we learn about all these incredible capabilities, we're still, you know, there's a lot of flexibility and modularity for us to be able to take on missions like that. I hope that helps.
Francis.
So, Vice Admiral Moore, I'm Francis Spencer, and I'm with Philadelphia Gear. I appreciate the point that you raised at the beginning of the Q&A about major component suppliers and the health of the overall industrial base. In the main reduction gear market, we are fortunate to be owned by a Fortune 500 corporation, the Timken Company. Our company, Philadelphia Gear, is stable, well-funded, but the production of our product does depend upon a large universe of suppliers within the domestic market, and they are not all blessed with the same degree of financial resources. I know that's something that Undersecretary of Defense Lord has expressed concern about, national capabilities that are occasionally in limited supply, things like suppliers of large ring forgings, things like heat treating for large metallic components. And the way that you keep that healthy is by having an order book that those companies that are one tier below us can depend upon, and that does depend on shipbuilding. I appreciate you bringing it up, and I would ask Admiral Moton and Admiral Galinis what your thoughts are on the source selection processes for future shipbuilding programs, and how much emphasis is placed on price versus other factors in source selection, and what the implications are for the industrial base. Thank you.
You know, from my perspective, because this was a topic on of discussion on frigate, right? First of all, every source selection is different, right? So there's not a stock answer that I'm going to give you how I think the criteria should weigh out, right? It's all carefully considered based on the requirement and the potential industrial base and all of that, right? So if you're looking for, yeah, I think we should do that, I will not do that, right? You know, so should we consider domestic industrial base as part of source selection? I think is kind of part of the question you're asking. I mean, I personally think it's an idea worth looking at, right? I mean, you know, I'm definitely not ready to set any new policy here today, more. But you know, in terms of, you know, we have the goal, right? We've said it. We said it for frigate. We have the goal of increasing the domestic industrial base, and I personally think that we should look at all ways to do that, right? And there's the analysis and things that we talked about. If there's things that we need to look at potentially in how we set up our solicitations, I absolutely think we should look at that. But beyond that, I think that's a little bit more of a future discussion.
Yeah, I would just add, so first off, your comment on price, price will always be a factor, okay? But it's not always the only factor. And, you know, as we get deeper into, you know, like in PO ships right now, many of our product lines are fairly stable, okay? And, you know, the way to, you know, solidify the industrial base a little bit is by providing, you know, a consistent demand signal, okay? So we can do that through some of the contracting strategies that we implement. So think the DDG 51 multi-year procurement, right? So that, you know, that was for 10 ships with an option ship in each one of the 5 years. You know, we're looking at that same type of an approach within the amphib portfolio right now, okay? You know, but that consistent demand signal to the industrial base, I think, helps get at what you're talking about. The other piece of this that I think is important, that frankly we perhaps don't always take best advantage of, is the use of advanced procurement money. Whether it's you know, for a single ship buy, okay, where you buy the long lead material and get that going again to help stabilize that industrial base, or you know, the use of EOQ type funding. Okay, so there's a couple of different mechanisms out there that we can use, I think, to help from a contracting standpoint that you know, that help with the industrial base.
So while we're on the industrial base, Matt, anything from industry's perspective you want to add on top of that?
Well, Admiral Galinis hit it with, you know, block buys, advanced procurement, multi-year contracts, all those things. Any acquisition strategy that can give us the horizon to know that we can invest in our facilities, in human capital, all that stuff is powerful for the industrial base. I would say, thank God, sequestration is done. You know, a decade of budget uncertainty has wreaked havoc across the industry. And so from an industrial base standpoint, living with a blunt instrument like that was very difficult. I would say from an industrial base, the one thing that's a huge concern is workforce development. Our shipyards pride themselves on training programs and apprenticeship programs that are state of the art, but there's no guarantee that shipyard worker will end up at that shipyard. Highly skilled work set can be hired away, but if you lived with years of layoffs, those guys exit the industry. So those men and women, we need to train the next generation. So workforce development's highly critical. I would say one last thing on that, sir. Probably as a shipyard industry, we need to work towards a national credential, a national standard so our shipyard workers can go from one home port to the other and not wait 3 weeks to get recertified or retrained. They can jump off the plane and go right to work. That's something as an industry I know we're working on. People like Mitch Waldman, who have worked on our workforce development committee, have said we have to get this right. We as the industry have to come and say this is what we need. And so we're working on that day and night.
I would offer up to you, come talk to us at NAVC, because we've had a concerted effort during my time to try and do the exact same thing with our public shipyards, which is, if you're a welder at one yard, we found when you got to the other yard, you had to go through a 2-week training period. And, I think the question is, if you're a certified nuclear welder at Puget, why aren't you a certified nuclear welder at Norfolk? And so we've tried to streamline those processes. I think that's, I'm encouraged that you're talking that on a national level, and I think NAVC would be willing to sit down and talk to you about what we're trying to do in that particular area.
We've heard a lot about that, and I think that's right. The public yards are ahead of us on that. We need to get to it. Okay. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, from the Coast Guard perspective, industrial base, would you like to talk some of this?
Yes, sir. So I think I do appreciate the SCA's efforts on the credentialing, because for the smaller shipyards, the small business side, I think that's really important, yes, particularly when industry needs to partner to meet the demand. So I think that really will help that, certainly in the performance time and the cost ultimately. So I think that's a real plus. A lot of my acquisitions are the smaller business side, and that gets tricky. Obviously, we need to continue to do better on the forecasting side, and I think we're trying to do that, as well as also across government, making sure that we look across the portfolios to ensure that we're not injecting too much contracting need and build out at the same time across government. So I'm very proud. Our partnership with the Navy has never been stronger, and I really appreciate that commitment from the team. We've had a lot of discussions on that. We know both in shipbuilding and ship repair, in that industrial base that is common to both, we got to continue to look at that, sir, and it's very valuable to all of us down there.
Yeah, thanks. One of the great things about being a moderator is you can talk without being asked questions. So I would say, this whole discussion on the industrial base for all you out there is critically important. If anybody's ever read Freedom's Forge about what happened in World War II, I think there's this nostalgic view that somehow World War II happened and we went, and all of a sudden we magically started building Liberty ships and tanks. If you go read the book, you'll find out that it really took us 3 or 4 years to ramp up and the industrial might of the United States. And so in this era of great power competition, as we're trying to get to 355 ships, anything we can do to support the industrial base, I think, is important, because if we actually get into a time of war, if anybody thinks that we're going to overnight accelerate the rate of shipbuilding, they got another thing coming. So thanks. Good question. Sir.
Hi, Justin Katz, Inside Defense. Admiral Galinis, I wanted to ask you about CHAMP, the Future Auxiliary Vessel. So not too long ago, the CBO put out a report that essentially said the Navy's estimate of CHAMP was about 50% higher than what CBO would have guessed or would have estimated, and the Navy's estimate was in the $1.2 billion range. I know you have 4 shipyards right now that are working to drive that number down, but I'm wondering if you could comment, at least at a high level, what do you think drove the Navy to come to such a different starting point than the CBO? I mean, that's a $500 million delta for a single ship kind or a single ship class that is not that far out in the future.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts there. So number one, so for those that right, CHAMP is a common hull, multi-purpose platform, but whenever you try to take a single hull form and spread it across a number of different mission areas, it's clearly not optimized for any one particular area, right? So, I think that drove a little bit of cost. And I'll tell you, again, working with the shipyards, okay, we got a lot of good feedback from industry on this, okay? And, at first it was, hey, our concept was, one hull form across, 4 or 5 different mission areas, and we'd modify that as we needed, right? Industry came back and said, hey, you probably want to look at 2 different hull forms, right? So we did that, and we were still coming in high. So that was one thing, is a common hull that was probably not optimized for specific mission sets. The other thing I'll just tell you is I think we had requirements in there that were probably a little bit above what we really needed. And so as I mentioned, what the team really did And a lot of credit to, to our Expeditionary and Sea Lift Program Office, PMS 385, Scott Searles and his team, as they went back and they looked, okay, so kind of a ground-up approach, which is kind of what CBO really kind of talked about in the report. Let's start with a commercial ship, and then let's add in the specific military unique requirements that we need, right? And so, I talked about weapons handling capability, okay, and heavier loads in some cases, and different cranes and stuff like that. But as we did that, and I'll tell you what the shipyards are coming in with now is some pretty innovative concepts on how they would get there and bring that price down, below, kind of, I'll say a $500 million or so threshold, okay? So, I think that the team's on a good path. The other part of that, I did mention this, and, Admiral Busby stepped out, but we're doing a lot of work with MARAD on the buy used, right? And so, again, that's a little bit different approach than what we've taken in the past, so we're kind of working with them. MARAD's got a lot of experience in that area, so we'll work with them on that. But those are just a couple of thoughts on kind of what drove the initial price of the Sea Lift.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sir.
So, Admiral Moton, could you comment on the testing that you've done with the variable depth sonar and the progress you've made there? Is it performing to your expectations, or any details you can provide on that? And Admiral Galinis, could you elaborate on what your plan is for the TAGOS competition and how that's going to map out over the next year, please?
Sure. Let me hit the VDS briefly. So the testing off of Fort Worth is actually just commenced. So, we're kind of in what we're calling the hydrodynamic and integration phase right now. So it's been less about so far it's been less about finding submarines and more about making sure that everything operates as it's supposed to be. So you're probably a little bit premature to answer your question specifically on that piece, but we have already tested the sonar off of a white chip experimental and had excellent results several years ago. Actually, back when I had the program, we had done testing back then, which was successful. So overall, I think certainly working closely with POIWS, I think the VDS is going to bring game-changing ASW capability to the platform, and we're really looking forward to it.
Doug, did you want to add anything, Doug?
Just concur.
Okay, good.
So on the TAGOS, so what I would tell you on TAGOS, a swath, we envision a swath platform, so it's a ship that has to operate in a heavy sea state at an increased speed, ship speed, above what the current TAGOS ships operate at. And so, that requirement, high speed, heavy sea state, those are kind of the driving requirements. We have a notional design that has been developed, by the Navy that we're going to use to work with industry. We expect to release the RFP for industry studies this year, and we'll work to kind of mature the concepts that we have right now. We're also we've gotten some other, I'll say, unsolicited kind of inputs from industry that we're evaluating and looking at, but that's kind of the basic concept for TAGOS, at least for 2020 right now.
Okay. Thank you. John Harper again. Admiral Moton, there's obviously a lot of interest in unmanned systems. Can you talk about, how far away we are from seeing large numbers of UUVs or USVs deployed, and what are some of the challenges that need to be worked through before that can happen?
That's my whole day job you want me to talk about. So a little bit different situations too. So first of all, on UUVs, right? A few years ahead of where we are on USVs. If you want to talk about large numbers of UUVs deployed, I encourage you to go down to Stennis and to visit the Naval Oceanography Command, right? The UUVs are already out there and operating, right? So where we are, of course, I think in POUSC taking it at the next step is obviously for combat capability for UUVs, and then also much larger, right? In terms of our extra large UUV for our sort of peer launched capability, all the way down to Razorback, which is going to be torpedo tube launch and recovery for turns every submarine into a UUV platform. I'm pretty sure that's as much submarine talk as I should be doing in this room right now here, right, at SNA. But that's the UUV piece. For the USVs, first of all, we are, again, one of the first things I did, I read like the history of early naval aviation. We're kind of in that stage, right? We have prototypes out there. We've had the 2 vessels from under the OSD SCO program that we manage for them and out there operating. And those have been primarily focused on, so these, when you ask me what's important, it's these things, right? They've been focused on HM&E, autonomy and reliability, which has been really the biggest reason for the phase 1 of that SCO program, mission autonomy, and then navigational autonomy. I will tell you, at least on some of the navigational autonomy, we are not, the U.S. Navy is not necessarily in the lead, right? There are commercial companies out there around the world that are doing, optionally manned, optionally unmanned vessels with some degree of autonomy quite a bit. So the testing that we did in SCO was, so far has gone really well. The phase, we have done, numerous unmanned autonomous transits in the Gulf of Mexico. Sea Hunter, which was, under ONR and has transitioned to us, has been out to Pearl and back. On the way back from Pearl, it didn't have to be boarded at all until it got to San Diego. So the prototypes have been successful, and that's where my focus is on on getting more prototypes the next few years. And then the other thing that we are moving into with phase 2 of the Overlord program is integration with the C4I capabilities, integration with combat system payloads. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's probably a good snapshot of the challenges on unmanned. I mean, we'll get through our prototypes. We're doing our enabling capabilities. The last piece I would just mention, I sort of said it in my intro, is we're doing what I sort of call foundational things. Like, so from a acquisition standpoint, really, we have been taking the lead in what's called the Unmanned Maritime Autonomy Architecture, UMAA, working with industry on a system that's going to have open interfaces between pieces of autonomy software, allows each company to do their own pieces of autonomy kit, which we can then integrate, right? So we are doing a lot of those kind of things, which are, if you think about it, is exactly the stuff we should be doing at the start of an unmanned program. So that's my snapshot.
Yeah. And so given the need to do all of that work, do you think it's maybe 5 or 10 years before we're going to see large numbers of these systems deployed, or is it a shorter or longer horizon for that?
Well, again, UUVs, I think you're already out there, right, in terms of the combat capability, right? I mean, we're in sort of fit-up timeframes for getting capability out there. On the medium, I mean, what's in PV-20, in the medium USV, we have one prototype in 19, and then we have another one in 23. That's what's in PV-20. So, we're still talking fit-up timeframes for those to start to deliver. For LUSV, I mean, with the prototypes are all moving now. When are we going to transition to program of record, sort of procurement, full-up capability there? I mean, that's something that, frankly, because of our discussions with Congress and industry, we are making some adjustments there. And I think when PV-21 comes, you'll see some adjustments. But it's not, this is not, 15 years out, right? This is end of fit-up, a little bit beyond fit-up is when those numbers are going to be out there. But, for the industry folks, I've cautioned, right, if you are sitting here in 2020 thinking that unmanned is your lifeline to having a steady industrial base, we need to get through the prototype phase first, right? And that's where my focus is.
Thank you.
If I could just add on too, so supporting Casey on the combat system side, a lot of the work that we've been doing on certainly the virtualized combat systems, all of our major sensors, weapons, everything are inherently modular and scalable. So we've been working sort of in parallel so that when we do, get out there and experiment, he can have a choice of packages, whatever the Navy wants in terms of combat capability. We will be there to be able to provide it sort of in stride with the production.
Robbie Harris here, a former naval person. Question concerns DDG 1000. My friend Mark Van Droff just reminded me that DDG 1000 was authorized and appropriated in the year 2005. It's now 2020. Now, some have explained that it's 15 years and it's still not a full-up round, that DDG 1000 shares several things in common with the Ford-class aircraft carrier and the Boeing 787 airplane. Namely, that there were multiple simultaneous technology revolutions in the same platform. I direct this question across the panel. Do you agree that that is partially the reason why it's taken so long to make the DDG-1000 a full-up round?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So great question, and I would tell you, kind of the difference between evolutionary versus revolutionary ship design, and I would argue that our more successful programs have been more on the evolutionary approach than they have the revolutionary. Okay, but that's not to say that we shouldn't look at revolutionary technologies to incorporate into our programs. And I would argue, I would offer the integration of the Aegis combat system, okay, into what at the time was a 963 hull form that then became the cruiser and eventually migrated on to the DDG-51. I mean, that was a game-changing capability that we, we brought to the fleet at that time. The challenge on 1000, there were, I want to say, 10 different technology subsets, if you will, trying to integrate those into one ship class, and frankly, it was hard. And the technology in some cases was not fully mature. I think most folks in this room would argue that integration is really the hard part when you come right down to it. As you bring all these technologies together, and that's really where we're struggling. As I mentioned, as we go through the combat systems testing right now, we're bringing the hardware and the software together for the first time on the ship. Okay, that's generally not a recipe for success, and so that's kind of where the team's doing a great job. We're going to get through this, but it generally does take a little bit longer when you compare that maybe to the Aegis model, where we bring the hardware and the software. I mean, even today, right, we bring the hardware and the software together for each ship before we send that chipset to the shipyard to be fully integrated. Okay. As we start talking about like a large surface combatant, I mean, a lot of these lessons learned, the shore-based integration piece, okay, and some of the fundamental work that will start this year up in Philadelphia for like the integrated propulsion plant, the electric drive, eventually migrating to, an integrated electric plant that then brings in an energy storage capability and the control systems that requires and the thermal management piece that is needed. So I think you're exactly right. It's a number of technologies that really kind of drove us to that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would add.
I'd like to add.
I think you're right, and that we've got to be careful about trying to inject too much technology at once and learn some of that lesson. But I would tell you that when I was PO, carriers used to carry around 3 newspaper articles from the Washington Post, and they had 3 headlines. One, the Navy's $1 billion black hole. The second headline was building a Cadillac when we only needed a Volkswagen, and the third headline was the Navy's acquisition nightmare. And I would carry that with me when I go talk to people, because people would knowingly give me this kind of little smirk that, yep, you're talking about the Ford-class carrier, and then I would say, hey, by the way, 70 ships later, DDG-51 is doing pretty well. My point being is, we are building second and third generation technology to stay ahead of the threat. And do we always get it right the first time? No. And in fact, I think history would tell us on most first-of-class everything we have challenges, whether it's Joint Strike Fighter, Super Hornet, you can go F-14, most of our shipbuilding programs. But the thing that I would like to tell everybody is we've got the best industrial capability in the world, and we've got the best engineers on the Navy side of the house supporting that. And at the end of the day, we always make it work. And when we do, they are just magnificent platforms that serve this country well for a long period of time. And I will tell you, that's what's going to happen with Ford. We made the decision to limit DDG-1000 out to 3 ships. But we're going to learn a lot from DDG-1000 as well, just like we learned from Seawolf, that is going to be a powerful contributor to the next generation surface fleet out there. So I don't want anybody to be left with the fact that, that we're going to walk away from these as complete disasters. They've had their challenges. I think we've learned from those things. But I will tell you, I'm bullish certainly on Ford, and I think we're going to look back and be thankful that we built DDG 1000 as well.
Good.
Yeah, and I would just say too, you know, yes, we can talk about, you know, in 2005, but the program was conceived and then authorized and appropriated when the world was a different place. Naval strategy was a lot different when we conceived of a stealthy ship with a long-range gun of being a primary battery for the U.S. Navy. The world has completely changed. Now we are in an era of competition on the high seas. So the Navy made the you know, good decision to go back to the DDG-51 and get the Flight 3 out there to handle that. In the meantime, programmatically, you know, there was a lot of decisions that were made to get the 3 ships that we have. We will absolutely and are learning from those ships and taking those lessons forward into not just, you know, the DDG-51 program, but certainly any of the future stuff that we're doing as well. As we operate those ships, we're learning a lot of things that, you know, may have been, you know, somebody's idea for how the capability might be utilized someday. Now that sailors are out there doing it, we're learning a lot more. So thankfully, of those technologies that we did bring to bear, there was some inherent modularity and scalability in there that we are going to absolutely be able to take advantage of.
Just a footnote on the point about how the world has changed. Think about the B-52 and when the first B-52 flew and how relevant it is today.
Exactly.
Sir.
Thank you, Admiral. This question's for Matt Paxton. Matt, I've had a chance to listen to you for the last few years as a member of SCA, and one of the second items you talked about today is the defense of the Jones Act. Prior to my attending SCA on a regular basis, I don't think I ever really truly appreciated what the Jones Act was. There were events recently, the hurricane through Puerto Rico, the sinking of the El Faro, and there was a lot of misinformation put into the news by a lot of organizations within Washington, D.C. that and there were so-called institutes and experts. I think it's important for this group to understand why we should care about the Jones Act. And if you could provide a few tidbits of information on how the association went ahead and countered some, what I would say, false impressions or misinformation. And we're not talking about just small people, but like Senator McCain was very anti-Jones Act for whatever reasons he had. Yeah. But if you could just explain how
well, thank you, Dean, for the question. I appreciate it. I think in a time where we talk about border security, it makes me wonder why we would ever entertain repealing the Jones Act. It's the eyes and ears on our waterway. It's our literal coastal security line. You know, after 9/11, I don't know if many people know this, but there was a massive sea lift operation to get people off Manhattan. Those were all U.S. mariners. Those were all small tugboats and ships that went to get our citizenry off the island. And the fact of the matter is, they were manned by U.S. men and women who care about this country deeply. So I think about the Jones Act the same way I think about our exclusive economic zone. Why would we give up 200-mile exclusive economic zone? We wouldn't. And we shouldn't be entertaining giving up the Jones Act for some misguided free trade argument. There is not free trade when it comes to shipbuilding, and down to our founding fathers, they saw the wisdom in having a cabotage laws that make sure our waterborne commerce is ours and our borders are secure. So I'm passionate about the Jones Act. I'm passionate about the men and women that serve in our coastal waterways and our inland waterways. I don't think we'd ever want to have foreign vessels moving dangerous cargoes under our bridges next to our stadiums. I think that should be kept for us to do. Similar ways we treat our airlines industries. We don't have planes that land in New York and then go on to Philadelphia and LA. Those are contained for U.S. pilots and crews. I think the build requirement's absolutely critical because it's the most manipulated industry in the world, and if we don't maintain some semblance of an industrial base here, we will lose it rapidly. And I would argue proposals like Senator Wicker, who's proposing Energizing Shipbuilding Act, which would require certain amounts of our energy resources go on U.S.-built vessels in international commerce is something we should be entertaining at this point in time. Congressman Garamendi has introduced similar legislation on the House side. I think we are a maritime nation. We're an Arctic nation. We should double down on the fact that we need an industrial base to build the next generation of ships and autonomous ships and all those things. And certainly we're very, very proud of our world-class Navy shipbuilders and Coast Guard shipbuilders and other governmental shipbuilders, but we really need that industrial base, and I think the Jones Act is the one thing that keeps that here. If you look outwards, everyone's subsidizing this industry, and we'll lose that foothold. So thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Okay, I think we got time for one, maybe two more questions. We'll see how we're doing time-wise here. So, sir, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Herbert Tinsley with GAO. Question for Admiral Moton. We've talked about this sort of evolutionary perspective on the Ford specifically. I wondered if you, in light of that, you might talk a bit about where you see the LCS going post-2016 program review. What challenges do you see? What successes do you see in terms of implementation with that assessment?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll give my perspective of that, right? As I said at the beginning, 19 LCSs are delivered, right? So there's 19 of those ships that, our surface force should give you their perspective as well, right, on how the ships are doing. We've got 3 ships deployed right now, 2 to Western Pacific, 1 at the 4th Fleet right now. Again, Admiral Brown has talked a lot about mainstreaming LCS. We have LCSs that have been through their first basic phase, their advanced phase training, operating with in support of carrier strike groups. I mean, the fleet has taken those ships on board and is learning how to use them and asking us lots of questions in terms of potential capabilities, in terms of lessons learned to improve reliability as we get more operating time on the ships. I mean, it's a pretty exciting time. I mean, from my perspective, there's of course challenges that we've had to work through, but from my perspective as the PEO, I think that the decisions that were made in 2016 for LCS were the right decisions, and we are getting because we're still able to forward deploy those ships and have the multiple crews. I think Admiral Brown talks about we're going to have 66 crews here, if you think about it shortly. We are getting a lot of capability out of that, and it's just beginning. I mean, Fourth Fleet's doing things experimental with the use of those ships. Just a lot of capability. I tell the folks in my program offices that, hey, when the fleet says, hey, could we put this on a ship? Could we put this on a ship? And we're working our program of record piece, which is important, getting the mission packages finished. But I also tell my folks, hey, look, we designed a fast service combatant with empty space and a crane. So if we didn't think we were going to get a lot of questions about what kind of stuff did we think we could put on the ship, then we were fooling ourselves, right? So we're trying to position ourselves to help be able to answer those questions in the future, right? Clearly, the biggest thing besides the lessons learned, job one for us on LCS is finish the mission packages, right? And that's what we're really singularly focused and are really proud that Surface is essentially done and moving forward to ASW and finishing out MCM.
Thank you.
I think one more question.
Oh, yes, sir. I just want to say thank you to the panel for addressing a lot of the pertinent issues of today for the United States. My particular question is kind of centered on my background within Homeland Security and National Targeting Center. I am now the CEO of SEM North America, and we focus on a lot of things like oil and gas, modernization of fleets, and we have to talk about cost recovery. I haven't heard that spoke about today, and my question to the panel is more centered on how are we going to focus our objective on cost recovery, particularly within the corrosion space. 25% of the budget for O&M was spent on corrosion programs in 2010. So how can we get a better cost recovery model going forward, and kind of hear your thoughts on that?
Let me let Admiral Scofield field that one. That's the last answer here.
So great question. We know sustainment drives 70% or so of the life cycle cost of assets. So your point's right on. Coast Guard, we live this on the corrosion side. A lot of it is the technology piece to start, but really it's good partnerships with our operational commanders and making sure that they understand where the more vulnerable parts of our ships are and systems are on that side to maintain those systems better downstream. That's obviously been a challenge. We've got a lot of systems out there, particularly now today with our new modeling. We try to save a lot of weight with specialized alloys, which cause a lot of corrosion issues. So we got to continue to watch that. Make sure we build that into our risk factors up in the design up front to get that life cycle look on those systems for that overall cost, life cycle cost and sustainment to be piece of that cost trade-off up front. And so we continue to do that. There has been great technology out there, particularly on the scanning side. For hull forms, we've done scanning on our current ships, airborne, that have thousands of points of analysis that you computerized that you can use as a basis and then continue to update over the years. And you can see that degradation on systems, and you can decide what actions you're going to take based on modeling or other risk factors. So that's been a really positive piece that industry has brought to us to improve and keep our ships 60 years plus out there, and other systems out there, aircraft as well. Taking aircraft out to 30,000 hours, both rotary wing and fixed wing aircraft as well, and that's a challenge on that side.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we've left 24 seconds left, so I think we've managed this pretty well.
That's great. We really obviously have our shipbuilding in good hands. It's a lot of talented people up on this stage, and they're obviously doing a great job. So let's thank them. And there are lunches that you're available for purchase during the break.